Has anyone ever went to a conference before or a seminar? Ever listened to a message and had this look of confusion on your face? Anybody ever had to do that? Okay. So in my job as a trainer, I have to train new hires, the roles and responsibilities, the programs and systems that we use, etc., of the job that they've just been hired to do. In this job as a trainer, though, I have to train from their perspective and not my own. You see, I've been working in my job for 9 years, here coming up in August, and they are just starting their first few days. So if they haven't come from a previous health career, the language and verbiage of health insurance or medical terminology will be very confusing to them. So let's do some examples. So if I say the word pre-authorization, how many of you know what that means? Most of you. Okay. You've all had insurance for a while. Okay. If I ask you if your surgery is being done at a BDC, does anybody know what that means? Mom, you're not allowed to answer because you work for the same job I do. Okay. Leanne also works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay. If I say, are you PPO with your local, does anybody know what that means? A couple of you. Okay. So these are very common language and verbiage that we use daily in our department at work. So you may not know health insurance terms, which is okay. So how about some medical terminology, right? You have to go to the doctor. You need to tell them what's wrong. They have to turn it into medical language to send it to your insurance. So again, mom's not allowed to answer. So does anybody know what a cerebrovascular accident is? Dave knows. Now I can't say him. Cerebrovascular accident. Cerebral, thank you. It's a stroke. Okay, so if you go to the emergency room, someone takes you to the emergency room because you're having a stroke, your paperwork to your insurance is not going to say stroke on it. Okay, how about myocardial infarction? Yes. Yes, myocardial infarction is a heart attack. My favorite specialist, otolaryngologist. Does anybody know what an otolaryngologist is? It's an ENT. Yes, ear, nose, and throat. Okay. If you go to the hospital and have a bilateral tonsillectomy, what did you have done? You had bilateral tonsil surgery, which means both tonsils were removed. Okay. You guys are pretty good. Okay. If you go to the doctor and tell them you have nephralgia, what are you telling them? If you go to the doctor and telling them you are having nephralgia, what are you telling them? Does anybody know? Okay. Yes, pain in your kidneys. So here's the last one. I have to try and say, this one's really hard to say. Cephalalgia. 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 I broke it up for you. CEPH. Ceph. A-L-A-L-G-I-A. Cephalalgia. It does deal with pain, but where is the pain? Head is correct. So any type of pain affecting your head, face, or neck. Okay? So those are medical terminology, health insurance, language words that we see every day in our department in pre-authorization and many, many more. But those are just some short ones I did today. So if you don't know the language of the process of your career, you are going to be very confused and lost if your teacher, trainer, or guide doesn't teach you the fundamentals and foundations of your job first. Okay? You know another area where there are many confused and not understanding fundamentals or foundation? The biblical worldview. So one thing I picked up at church camp is there's still a huge discrepancy of biblical teaching in our churches today. So at church camp, the executive team calls and asks different pastors, college professors, anybody that is in a career or field of ministry, preaching or teaching, to come and speak at church camp. So we have, 3 different speakers usually each week from different backgrounds of college professors or ministers. Okay. And so just listening to them teach, it's still very clear Ryan has preached about many times, a huge discrepancy of biblical teaching. So I know Ryan has preached about this many times, and he has cautioned and brought it to light many times to make sure to go to the Word when somebody's teaching you and, read the Word yourself. So the last 3 weeks of camp has brought light to this problem, even more so in our youth ministry world. Okay, these are kids that we are trying to teach foundations and fundamentals for them to either, one, accept Christ as their Lord and Savior, be a disciple of Christ, or the possibility if they feel called into ministry down the road. So in Galatians 1, 6 through 10, the Bible warns us about other gospels. So let's open our Bible and see what the scripture tells us. So Galatians 1, 6 through 10. And if anybody sees a Bible laying around, I'm having a very bad brain attack day, so it's somewhere out here. So Galatians 1, 6 through 10 says, as for those, am I reading this? No, that was not the right, I'm glad I checked. That would have been confusing everybody. Okay, here we go. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you by the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel, which is really no gospel at all. If evidently some people are throwing you into confusion and are trying to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we are an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let him be eternally condemned. As we have already said, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel other than what you accepted, let him be eternally condemned. Am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God? Or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. So as we're trying to reach kids, are we trying to reach kids through approval of human earthly things or the approval of godly biblical authority? Are we focusing on performance-based ministry rather than the mercy and grace of Jesus and accepting him as all that you need for salvation? Are we using entertainment to reach kids through ministry or authentic worship and biblical authority? So I've been exploring and checking out other ministry programs and talking with other youth pastors, trying to determine why we are losing youth and family in our own church ministry here. If you were not aware, we've had some families tell us at the end of youth group, if you did not attend the youth group meeting, we had families tell us that we are not bringing our kids back to your youth group, we're taking them somewhere else. So we are trying to figure out why, what is different between our ministry and why they want to go to a different ministry. However, through these conversations, what I've observed is more of an entertainment than a worship service. So I understand we all worship in different ways, and we have different forms of worship. However, what I caution is, are we worshiping in ways to please and glorify the Lord, or are we worshiping in ways to please humans because they like the false gospel being taught to them? So we have gospels that teach, and these are just some that we've heard recently, gospels that teach a performance-based faith. This is one of Ryan's most favorite false gospels that you hear him preach of often. That is a false gospel. We have gospels that teach everyone is saved. I don't know how many times I heard that at church camp. Everyone is saved. Jesus loves everybody. Everybody gets to go to heaven. That is a false and scary gospel to be teaching. We have gospels that teach positivity and mindfulness is how to live a great life. That is also a false gospel, because if we all had positivity and mindfulness every day of our lives, we would not have the struggles that we know we have, that God told us we would have. So at camp, there was this different video, and I know the leaders who went with us to camp are going to laugh at me because it drove me crazy. At camp, there was a different video that was played every day to talk about camp rules. Okay? So when I have youth group, I will stand in front of my kids and I will verbally tell them what the expectations our youth group rules are. Okay? I do not need some crazy video of some guy running around screaming, acting crazy to tell my kids what the rules are. But we have them. for camp, okay? No offense to any pastors who use them if they love them. They drive me insane, okay? So these camp rules is just a funny, crazy video of this gentleman yelling about what you should and should not do at camp. And if we break a rule, then you're gone. That was his constant thing. If you do this, you're gone. You do this, you're gone, okay? Was it funny? That's debatable depending on the people that you asked. Was it a teaching material? That also depends on who you ask and who was paying attention to the words and not so much the entertainment of the video. Was it entertaining? To the kids, it was hilarious. To most adults, it was not so good and didn't really see the point. But the campers loved it, okay? During our talent show night, we had a talent show night for junior high camp that we give the children an opportunity to use the gifts that God has given you through a talent show, singing, acting, whatever you feel that God has called a gift to you, you can do it in a talent show. I did not post those videos on our camp page for a reason. But that to them was entertaining, okay? We had a speaker that was trying to connect with the campers by telling bear stories at the beginning of every chapel time. So chapel time is in the evenings where we are, preparing them and teaching them biblical lessons, biblical foundation and authority, I hope, in regards to what the camp theme was, which was streaks this year. And so one of the camp weeks, we had a leader who, in order to try and engage the children and the campers, would have bear stories on what to do if you came across a bear. Now, I understand being in youth ministry, we need icebreakers and try to engage with our audience. But the campers became so focused on how to survive bear attacks, which I don't think happens very commonly here, and would completely lose focus on the lesson, and some would even become bored by the time we got to a lesson. However, if the speaker brought up a bear story, they were right back engaged with the speaker and having fun. And so, as I thought and reflected on this, and Ryan and I had many conversations each night when I was at camp. So my question was, how can we get youth on fire for Jesus like they get on fire for bear stories and crazy yelling entertainment? So how can we get our kids back on fire for Jesus? My other concern and question was, what has the world been teaching our youth that has drawn them further and further away from the true gospel? So one thing for certain is, although the enemy was trying so hard to steer our youth away, we know that God is still in control, even over the enemy. So camp was still, don't think, oh my goodness, I'm not sending my kids back to church camp because this is crazy, okay? Do not hear me wrong, because camp was still amazing. As we mentioned, we had a total of 13 baptisms that happened through the camp season, 10 at camp itself, and then 3 that will happen at their home churches. We had several campers rededicate themselves to Christ as well. And so even though the enemy is trying to steer our youth away, God is still in control. So I bring this topic of teaching this morning because we know from a few weeks ago, if you were here, we made an announcement that I had accepted a position at work that will prohibit me from continuing weekly youth ministry here. And so, this is where I get to be really vulnerable, and God gets to use me, so bear with me. So I've been struggling for quite a while with my role as a youth pastor, and if I'm fit to do this role. Some of the leaders of the church can very contest to that, because I have many conversations with our youth leader team and the elders as well. And so I really struggled with my roles and responsibilities as a youth pastor and youth minister, and seeing all of the kids wanting to go to another youth group, or families leaving our church to another church ministry. And so I've been struggling with this for quite a while. I tried to resign a couple years ago, and the elders wouldn't let me, and that was okay. But what has happened over the past couple years is not only am I struggling in my youth ministry role, Ryan and I had many very difficult conversations at camp the other night. Most of you also know that I have been recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that's causing significant health issues, including brain fog, which today I called it a brain attack, because it literally, I will go to bed with a very severe headache, and I know the next day my brain will not be working or functioning very well. And today was one of those days, so you kind of got to somewhat witness those struggles that we have with that. I have no idea where my Bible is, and my computer is not working, and I could not remember. The kids wanted to do camp songs for Youth Sunday today, which is the whole reason why we moved Youth Sunday to today, because we just had camp, and I cannot remember any of the camp songs. And you all know I'm like a worship song person. Like, I love worship music. It as well as my most favorite hymn. That's amazing that the youth picked that song today. But I don't remember. I don't remember the music. I don't remember what we sang. And so, this autoimmune disease is causing significant health issues, debilitating pain, and as we know, the rapid aging of my bones. So I know I joke around with people and say I'm 75 years old because my bones are 75 years old. But trying to keep up with 2 careers has been very challenging on my physical and mental health. And so when I applied for the promotion role at work in the corporate world, they offered me that promotion. I was facing a lot of hurt and challenges as a youth pastor, and I thought the corporate business world is more fit for women than ministry. Again, Ryan and I have had some really hard conversations about that. And so the past few months, I've experienced a lot of hurt in ministry, not within this church. Please do not think anybody in this church has done that. But just speaking with other youth pastors and people that are in the ministry field and having conversations and hearing things that they have said is very hurtful. And Ryan and I had conversations about it. And so I told Ryan, I do not want to be a part of ministry if that's how ministers treat other ministers. And so when all that was taking place, and here most recently we experienced some things at camp, that to me was, you need to step out of ministry and focus on your corporate job, in which I have done. With accepting this promotion, I knew with this promotion I would have to travel. And so that kind of me being vulnerable was a bitter decision that I had made, that, God is opening this door because he's closing this door. But, that was a decision that was made from being bitter and hurt of comments and things that was said by other people in ministry roles. And so I took the promotion and decided that my time in ministry is needing to come to a close for a season. So with that said, I will continue to support Ryan and the ministry here at the church. I'm still a pastor's wife, and I am still, everyone is called to ministry. Whether you're a paid minister or not a paid minister, everyone is a minister in some form or fashion. And so God has called all of us to be ministers in some form or fashion. So I will continue to do that in as much as support as I can, continue to support Ryan and the church. However, I will be stepping back from youth ministry, youth pastor, weekly worship responsibilities. This will be the last Youth Sunday that we will do, probably for quite a while. And so, Ryan has been talking with our leaders, and we're trying to transition to a more family-focused ministry. And I think this is giving an opportunity for that door to open, for that to happen. And so... Sorry, like I said, my brain is... And so, as we mentioned several times, the church will be having an all-church meeting in July. However, I, of course, will not be able to be there to attend since I will be out of town. But I want to encourage the church body to pray about a few things as you approach this upcoming meeting. How is the church going to reach the youth and families in our community? What ministries in this church are successful? And what are we doing as just for a tradition? How uncomfortable are we willing to be to reach the youth and families? What can we do to help families come and stay? Ryan talked about being a sticky church. How can we get people to come and stick and stay and help build this church family and church ministry? What ministries are we bringing families in to stay, and what are we doing that may be deterring them? Why is our youth leaving our youth ministry program? Why is our young families not coming back to church on Sundays? And so I want to encourage the church to not fall into the entertainment side of ministry that we see churches turning into today. Although it may seem appeasing as filling the churches with numbers, it is only doing that. I heard a pastor say in a message recently, which was crazy, because when I asked Scotty last Sunday, I said, hey, Scotty, can we move Youth Sunday to next week? Because I'm going to be gone in July. There's 5 Sundays in July. We always do Youth Sunday on the 5th. I'm not going to be here. And we try to want to wrap up camp season, let the kids, do that. So I asked him, can we move Youth Sunday to next Sunday? He's like, sure, I absolutely have no problems with that. And when I had been preparing my message for that, I had been, God had been laying on my heart with this entertainment and this struggle that I've been, battling with youth ministry. And one of the things that I had, watching in the camp is, and I told Ryan, I even said it to Ryan one night while I was there, I was like, we need to leave entertainment to Hollywood. We do not need to be bringing entertainment into ministry. And that, was just going through my head, and I've been talking about that as I was preparing this. And then I saw a video of another pastor say the exact same thing. He had a whole message about leaving entertainment to Hollywood and not to confuse and distract people from the true gospel by sacrificing biblical authority and entertainment. And so I see it in our youth kids, even at camp. And the more entertaining that you do with them, the more interactive and engaged they are. But if we go to sit and read and study and pray, we cannot engage the children that way. And we need to find a way to bring our kids back to that and get them back to a true biblical authority gospel. And so, with all that said, I love this church and the people in it. I know I struggled a few times in leaving youth ministry before and was encouraged to keep at it. But I think after much talking and praying with Ryan, right now I need a season of healing and to focus on my health. And unfortunately, I can't do that with 2 careers. One career I need to keep for our family's financial needs and health insurance. If I could, I would have chosen ministry, and I would have resigned from Blue Cross Blue Shield and chosen ministry full time. But that is not something we can do right now for our family and our goals as a family and our ministry. And so all of that and needing just time to heal from the past hurts, as many of you probably know, I struggle with emotions. And so actually feeling hurt, that was really hard for me to, I literally cried almost every night heading out to camp. Because I'm not used to emotions and not used to actually feeling hurt. And, I'll be vulnerable. I became bitter towards ministry, and I had to remind myself that hurt is caused by human sins and not by Jesus. And so had a long conversation with Ryan at camp, and I just told him, I know I cannot be effective as a youth minister and struggle with the hurt words that were spoken and just keep going. I need time for myself to heal and to focus on one career in order to keep my health as best as I can. So this season will give me an opportunity to do that, to continue to provide for my family and still continue to support my husband through this church ministry as much as I can. And I will be passing our song leading for invitation time to Hannah and Ave. We've talked about that. They will take over our invitation songs. So as I mentioned, this will be our last Youth Sunday for a while as we continue to transition to a family ministry program and what that looks like here at Tologa Christian Church. I don't want any youth or families to think that they can no longer reach out to me, for I'm still available if anyone needs to talk. I don't want anyone to just think I'm stepping out of youth ministry, that I'm no longer in ministry. I'm just no longer able to fulfill the roles, responsibilities, and duties of a youth pastor right now. It has been the most difficult decision I've had to make. I practiced this many times so I wouldn't cry. It does not come lightly, but my health is rapidly decreasing, and it is very frustrating to me mentally. Like I told Ryan this morning, I just wanted to go into his office and cry because I was having a bad day. But of course, it wasn't my day to preach, so that wasn't happening, unless Ryan impromptu sermoned. So as I wrap up today, I want to be encouraging to this church that you have an amazing church family here. You have an amazing community of families that need us. You have a great shepherd in your church, if I can say so myself. But most importantly, you have an amazing leadership of elders in this church. I know Ryan has said it many times, and I concur with him. This has been the strongest eldership leadership of a church that Ryan and I have ministered to or been a part of ministry for a very long time. And so you have amazing leadership to help. I've never felt more supported in my youth ministry role than I have in this church. The elders have been very strong in supporting me. I'll never forget when I tried to resign as a youth minister a couple of years ago, and Scotty walked into Ryan's office and asked if I was having a car sale moment where I was did something and, buyer's remorse. And, even a couple years ago, I was struggling with my role and had, wanted to resign then, but with the support of the leadership and the church family. And I went back to school to finish my degree, which that was also awakening of what our colleges are teaching. But it's time now because my health is just not keeping up with both careers right now. So please understand, as I mentioned before, these hurts and challenges I face are coming from big C church problems. Ryan and I had a conversation about that. It is not our church here. It is a big church problem with ministry and women in ministry and women as youth pastors. This church has had the strongest biblical sound leadership, as that I mentioned, that Ryan and I have ministered to, and that is a strong foundation to build up from here. The big question that I have for you as I wrap up today is, are you going to be all in and on board? I know Ryan asked that when he preached a couple weeks ago to prepare you guys for this upcoming church meeting. Is in order for the church ministry to work, everyone has to be all in and on board. And so, again, as you prepare for this upcoming meeting in the next couple of weeks, pray about that. Are you going to be all in? Are you going to be on board? I will, of course, as I mentioned, support Ryan in this ministry as best as I can. I love this church. I love this ministry. I love our families, and I definitely love our kids. So I'm still going to be all in as much as I can, and so that is my question for you. God has great things in store for this church and the ministry here in Tologa. But as Ryan mentioned in the song that he played a couple weeks ago, we have to be ready, because God is going to be on the move. God is on the move in our churches. And if we are not all in, on board, jumping on Noah's Ark, one of my favorite things that I see, and I see it posted on Facebook a few times, is, are your kids on Noah's Ark? Is your family on Noah's Ark? Because we have kids here that are on Noah's Ark, but their parents aren't. And that for me is a struggle. In our camp, we have the same thing. Our campers, we had a camper, and it crushed me. The very last day of youth junior high camp, I went to the camp. I always check in with the deans, how's everything going for your camp? Anything I can do? Anything you need me to do? And the dean just sat down and had a conversation because she was like, one of our campers just received a text message from their parents to tell her that they are getting divorced while she was at camp. And so the dean just was taken back by that. She just needed a few moments to talk that out, because that camper came to her and was like broken. She just had the best camp week, best ministry, experience with God, and now she's going to a broken home. Yeah, she was texting mom for permission to get baptized. And mom says, oh, you really chose a bad time for that because your parents were getting divorced. And we had campers that wanted to be baptized, and we have to seek permission for campers to be baptized. And we had parents that were, no, you can't be baptized, or this is not a convenient time. One of the parents responded, this is not a convenient time for that right now. And that crushed me to hear that from the dean, because I'm the one that is responsible for those permissions, documentations, baptism forms, certificates, and all of that. And so it just crushed me to have to write, campers wanting to be baptized, parents declined. Parents will not allow, whatever that situation is. So we may even have youth that want to be on the ark. We may have youth that are on the ark, but their parents are not. And so just think about that and be praying about that, because that's just not at camp. I mean, these are churches. Our camp represents churches in Oklahoma, New Mexico, Kansas, and Texas. We have a minimum of 10 churches that are representative in our camp that all have broken kids and broken families. It's not just a Tologa Church, Tologa Community Ministry problem. It is a worldly problem. And so be praying for that, and praying for, as you are trying to determine the ministry and the future ministry of our church and how we're going to reach families. How do we make sure the entire family is on the ark? Because as a youth pastor, it crushes me. I was also one of those campers when I was baptized at 17. I had to get permission. My parents said no. They said, no, you can't get baptized. And my youth pastor did it anyway. He was like, we're doing it, because that was just what he did. He was fired afterwards, but, that was a sacrifice he made. But be in prayer for families, be in prayer for all of the campers, as Ryan mentioned. I don't even know what our total numbers were of how many campers that came to camp this year. I don't know what it is. I know 5th and 6th had 52. Junior high had 42. Day camp had 22. So quite a bit of families out there that are broken. And it's time for churches to step up and minister, because God's on the move. And we need to be ready for what God is going to be calling whatever that ministry is here.